race, we will go ahead and commence our event. I would like to thank you all very much for being here. And before we get started, we will open with a word of prayer from Mitzi Money.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you first of all for blessing each of us for being born in a country where we do get to have input into those who serve us. Lord, I pray tonight that truth will be the watchword. Help the candidates to be able to speak truth and help us as voters to be able to discern and know who we are to vote for. Help us all to seek to follow the plan that you have for our county, our state, and our nation. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mrs. Money. Chairman David Hale will now lead us in the pledges.
Let's stand. Give me just a second. American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Hale. One other quick thanks. We are very grateful to Sheriff Randy Meeks, who is here with us this evening to ensure we have a safe event. The following information applies to all participating candidates unless a group is specifically excluded. First, if you are not in the Precinct 3 constable race, we ask that you take a seat in the reserved candidate waiting area. This is David Hale. He is the chairman of the Hunt County Republican Party and is serving as the timekeeper. There is a timer displayed for you and the audience. I am Allie Corrales, president of the Hunt County GOP Club, and will be asking questions for the forum this evening. Thank you for joining us. Will the candidates for Constable Precinct 3 please enter the stage?
Gentlemen, if I can seat you alphabetically. So I have Joel Gibson, Bradley Lumpkin, and Wade Sheets.
This event is being live streamed on the Hunt County GOP Club Facebook page. For that reason, we are asking all the candidates to speak as loudly as possible into the microphone so that the people listening through my iPhone can hear you as well. We will begin with the candidates for Constable Precinct 3. The 3 candidates running for the Republican slot in this race are seated before you. Each candidate will first make an opening statement of up to 1.5 minutes. Because all of the offices included in tonight's forum are involved in law enforcement, each candidate will be asked if he has ever been arrested or indicted. Each individual is to answer a simple yes or no. If the candidate's answer is yes, the candidate will have 90 seconds to answer a follow-up question. After that, there will be 2 additional questions. Each candidate will have up to 1.5 minutes to answer the questions posed to them. Then, they will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Officer Gibson, you may begin with your opening statement.
I'm Joel Gibson, and I'm running for Hunt County Constable Precinct 3. I have more than 28 years of law enforcement experience, and I hold a Master Peace Officer Certificate, which is the highest level a Texas Peace Officer can achieve. I was awarded Deputy of the Year in 2016 by the Greenville Kiwanis Club. I have served as Chief of Police, City of Celeste. I served as a patrol deputy and criminal investigator for both Sheriff Don Anderson and Randy Meeks. I worked in patrol, answering calls and making arrests when needed. When not answering calls and taking reports, I performed security checks on businesses and residents. I worked very hard on identifying offenders and making arrests for illegal narcotics and drugs. While working for Sheriff Anderson, I was assigned Hunt County Criminal Investigation Division and later rose to the rank of sergeant. I've worked over 12 years as an investigator and worked many different types of crimes in my career, including burglary, robbery, sexual assault, child abuse, and homicide cases. As a candidate for Precinct 3, I have the most experience. As a peace officer, I feel like I am the most qualified to serve in this position. And I have 4 years of experience than my opponents. I have dedicated my career to serving the citizens of Hunt County, Precinct 3, and I want to continue to serve as your next constable in Precinct 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Gibson. Please remember to speak as loudly as possible. Director Lumpkin, you may begin with your opening statement.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. I'm Bradley Lumpkin, and I'm running as your candidate for constable in Precinct 3. I was born and raised in Bull City. I graduated from Texas A&M University in Commerce with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I then went to work for Walmart as an investigator. During that time, I worked many complex criminal investigations, working closely with the FBI, Secret Service, postal inspectors, and local law enforcement. Some of those investigations had national security implications that involved terrorist cells in the United States. I also worked many identity theft investigations, where I not only assisted in the apprehension and prosecution of the suspects, but I also assisted the crime victims in restoring their credit. After leaving Walmart, I went to work as a global security consultant, working primarily in South America, where I assisted multinational corporations in reducing their losses and developing executive protection programs. Throughout my career, I have learned how important it is to develop relationships with all levels of law enforcement, and most importantly, crime victims and the community. I am currently Executive Director of the Wool City Housing Authority, President of the Wool City EDC, and a board member of the Mount Carmel Cemetery Association. To the people of Precinct 3, some of you are my friends. Some of you are my family, but all of you are my neighbors.
Thank you, Director Lumpkin. Investigator Sheets, you may begin with your opening statement.
My name's Wade Sheets. I'm a 4th generation Hunt County resident. I've been married to my wife Cassie for 9 years. We have a 6-year-old daughter named Kinley who attends Celeste ISD and a 3-year-old son who will be starting there next year. I also have 2 nieces and a nephew and several cousins who attend Wolf City ISD. So I have a vested interest in Northern Hunt County. I've lived there my whole life, and that's where home is. For my full resume, you can go to Wade Sheets for Precinct 3 Constable on Facebook. But I started as a jailer, went to a dispatcher for a few months before going to patrol in 2009, was promoted to patrol corporal, then patrol sergeant, and now sergeant investigator. I am a SWAT team member. I'm a member of the Sulphur Springs Police Department and Hopkins County Joint SWAT Team. I'm an auto theft investigator, sexual assault and family violence investigator, narcotics investigator, and I'm an SFST or standardized field sobriety testing instructor. I'm also an instructor, adjunct instructor through Kilgore College with the East Texas Police Academy, and I'm a member of the Wesley United Methodist Church, as well as the praise band and security team there at Wesley. I just ask that everyone keep me in mind for Precinct 3 Constable. I would love to be home and would love to serve you.
Thank you, Investigator Sheets. The following question requires a simple yes or no answer. Officer Gibson, have you ever been arrested or indicted? Thank you, Officer Gibson. Mr. Lumpkin, have you ever been arrested or indicted?
I have been arrested but never indicted.
Thank you, sir. You will now have 90 seconds to elaborate on that. The question is, how does that impact how you would function in the office of Constable Precinct 3?
Well, you know, when we're young, we don't always make the best decisions. And when I was 21 years old, I wasn't arrested for public intoxication. I was asleep in a vehicle, and the officer showed up and decided I didn't need to drive home, so he drove me to a place to spend the night. But I think, you know, that experience was something that told me that I never wanted to go down that road again, for sure. And I think a lot of young people make bad decisions. and that does not ruin them for life. Hopefully it's a teaching, learning moment for them. So, thank you.
Thank you, Director Lumpkin. Investigator Sheets, have you ever been arrested or indicted?
No.
Thank you, Investigator Sheets. We will now move on to the next question. Director Lumpkin, what qualifications and character qualities equip you to function most effectively in the role of constable?
Well, as most of you have already learned from my opening statement, I'm not a certified peace officer. But if I win this primary, I will be certified before the general election. I have worked very closely with law enforcement. I've been through a lot of the same training that law enforcement goes through. It's just all been on the private side. I think the thing that makes me most qualified is my ability to develop relationships with people. I think it's very important, is having relationships with your community, being involved in your community, being out there every day so that people see you and know that you are there to help them. And that's what I would like to do as your constable.
Thank you, Director Lumpkin. Investigator Sheets, what qualifications and character qualities equip you to function most effectively in the role of constable?
I believe I hit on the part of that in my opening statement. Certified auto theft investigator, sexual assault and family violence investigator, narcotics investigator, and SFST instructor. Just this morning, Celeste Police Department responded to a crash on Highway 69 at 4th Street and had to call for a Department of Public Safety to come from who knows where to test someone for DWI. As constable, I will already be in that area. I can go handle that situation. As I plan on doing with pretty much every situation in the northern part of the county. I plan on working extremely closely with whoever wins the sheriff's race. I plan on working extremely close with the sheriff's office, the local PDs and surrounding agencies, as well as federal authorities that I work with now, to make sure that the northern citizens are taken care of in Precinct 3. Above all else, I have integrity, and I believe that's the biggest thing of any peace officer's job. I don't make many promises, but I promise this to everyone in Precinct 3. I may not always do what is fair or what people like or what is popular, but I can assure you that I will always do what is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Investigator Sheets. Officer Gibson, what qualifications and character qualities equip you to function most effectively in the role of constable?
I believe the years of experience that I have through the sheriff's office, a lot of the time in the sheriff's office, we covered things that the constable's office does, such as civil process. I have many years of experience in patrol, CID, which is investigations. I've worked many different types of cases throughout my career. I believe that that experience will assist me in being able to move the constable's office forward.
Thank you, Officer Gibson. Moving on to the next question. Investigator Sheets. Constables serve papers on a court-mandated, time-sensitive schedule. What challenges, personal or private, might you face in meeting those deadlines? How would you address those challenges?
One of the challenges is finding people who have an address listed in your area who have actually moved to another area. So you have to be able to track those people down, and that's part of networking with your citizens and getting to know your citizens. Because if you don't know them, you're not going to know who to talk to find that person. That's the main part of your job, is tracking people down and getting those papers served to them, and while maintaining officer safety. Another thing that goes back to the last question also is being a SWAT team member and having worked patrol for several years. I am huge on officer safety. And when you're going serving these civil processes, you're sometimes removing people's children from them. You're not delivering good news. You're removing them from their home on a forceful eviction. You have to have officer safety, or else you could get yourself or one of your citizens killed, or at least injured. So that's my main thing, is making sure you have your officer safety, and you don't get that through training. You get that through being out there on the streets, having your boots to the ground, and knowing your citizens. It's great to know your people for that reason, and for being able to know who may fight, who is not more likely to fight. Any situation is volatile, but if you know your people, you know how to treat them and deal with each individual person, because no two people are alike.
Thank you, Investigator Sheets. Officer Gibson, constables serve papers on a court-mandated, time-sensitive schedule. What challenges, personal or private, might you face in meeting those deadlines, and how would you address those challenges?
As Mr. Sheets said, you know, there's serving the civil process, there's a lot of dangers that go into that. You have to also know how to talk to people as well as know your people. And being able to talk to people and being able to lower their emotions in these stressful situations will help in that process.
Thank you, sir. Director Lumpkin, constables serve papers on a court-mandated, time-sensitive schedule. What challenges, personal or private, might you face in meeting those deadlines, and how would you address those challenges?
I think the way that you address those challenges is through time management. Whenever I was regional manager for Sam's Club in the Houston area, I had responsibility of 19 Sam's Clubs. Everything from Texas City to Conroe and Katy to Beaumont. That was definitely a time management challenge. So my philosophy always was you plan your work and you work your plan. Are there going to be things that come up that might change your plan? Sure. But that's just the nature of the business. Time management is something that a lot of people struggle with. They get overwhelmed easily. I think that I probably would have the best time management skills of either one of my opponents, just because of having that experience.
Thank you, Director Lumpkin. Before we move into closing statements, could the candidates for Constable Precinct 1 please make your way to the reserved waiting area? You will have 2 minutes for closing statements. Officer Gibson, you may begin your closing statement.
If elected constable, I will be dedicated to serving the citizens of Precinct 3. I realize that the duty of the constable is serving the civil process as a bailiff for justice of the peace court. Court is normally held between 8 and 5, and if I'm elected, my hours will be flexible. I will be a full-time constable for Citizens Precinct 3. I will be out patrolling in the afternoons and at night to help deter burglaries, thefts, and identify persons who are involved with illegal narcotics. I will be doing security checks on businesses and residents. I will assist Hunt County Sheriff's Office with emergency calls, whether it be a backup unit or a first responding unit. I will be patrolling your schools and your businesses, performing walkthroughs as well. The Hunt County Sheriff's Office has a program called the Silent Sentinel that was put in by Randy Meeks. The Silent Sentinel program is for people that are going on vacation and going to be out of town. And they're asking the deputy to come in and do a security check with their residents while they're gone. I want to implement that in Constable Precinct 3. That way, not only a deputy, but you also have a constable checking your residents as well. I've worked in law enforcement most of my life. I've lived in Celeste and Precinct 3, and I've dedicated my career to Hunt County law enforcement and citizens of Hunt County Precinct 3. If elected, my phone number will be listed on my answering machine at my office, and if a citizen in Precinct 3 needs to contact me, they can contact me directly or through the Hunt County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you, Officer Gibson. Director Lumpkin, you may now make your closing statement.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank and congratulate my opponents. I think they're doing a great job running their campaigns. I respect these men, and I wish them the best. They want your vote as much as I do, but I believe that I'm the best person for the job. This job is about building relationships with other law enforcement agencies, being there to back them up when their nearest help is possibly miles away. But most importantly, this job is about building relationships with the community. People that know me will tell you that I have a servant's heart, and they will tell you that I'm a hard worker. I want you to feel safe when you take your family to church, when you drop your kids off at school, and when you lay your head down at night. I believe that the knowledge and experience I have prepare me for the potential growth of this precinct. I have led a 250-person security team and managed a $6 million budget. I am committed to and involved in my community in numerous capacities. And I am committed to serving you as constable of Precinct 3. And I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lumpkin. Investigator Sheets, you may now make your closing statement.
Thank you. The Constable Precinct 3 office serves about 20 to 25 papers a month, civil process papers. That is not enough to keep anyone busy. That is not enough to be a full-time job, so I don't believe there will be any time issues on getting those papers served. One of the things that I want to do as the Constable of Precinct 3 is I'm also a certified jailer, so I'm able to supervise inmate trustees to take them out to the northern part of the county and try to clean up abandoned cemeteries, help elderly folks who aren't able to do the things around their house that need help, that aren't getting that help. Another thing is Wolf City is currently paying Hunt County off-duty deputies $50 an hour to come in and work off-duty in the area of Wolf City. I'm not trying to take their extra income, but I think I could take some of those shifts to help alleviate the city from some of those costs. It's my area anyway, why can't I be in Wolf City for a little bit? The section 86.021, general powers and duties of a constable, says that they shall execute civil warrants, evictions, and processes, and says that they may execute criminal processes. For me, you can turn that into will. I plan on working hand in hand with the Hunt County Sheriff's Office, being an extra arm of them to help them deter crime in the northern part of the county and to help solve crime in the northern part of the county. Last year, Hopkins County Sheriff's Office, where I'm currently employed, we had over 85% return rate for stolen property and over a 90% case clearance rate. That's where I was trained, that's how I'm expected to work, and that's how I expect myself to work for you, the citizens of Precinct 3 in Hunt County. Thank you.
Thank you, Investigator Sheets. Ladies and gentlemen, these are your candidates for Constable Precinct 3. We will now begin with the candidates for Constable Precinct 1. The 4 candidates for this position are seated before you. Please remember to speak as loudly as possible on behalf of our viewers online. This will follow the same format as before: opening statement, then followed by the short question of have you ever been arrested or indicted. Officer Haynes, you may now begin with your opening statement.
Thank you. I have been a certified peace officer since 1990, currently hold a Master Peace Officer certification, among many others. My wife and I are proud to call Hunt County our home. During my tenure with the Sheriff's Office, I have served in many capacities, the most recent of which is the Administrative Sergeant, with my primary duties being the Professional Standards Investigator, Public Information Officer, and Coordinator for Hunt County Crime Stoppers. I've accomplished many things in my career, some of which directly impact the citizens of Hunt County, such as overseeing the construction of the Hunt County South Command Post, assisting in rebuilding the Hunt County Sheriff's Posse to the point they are now trained in mounted search and rescue techniques, critical incidents, and creating the Citizens on Patrol organization. I have received training from the International Law Enforcement Academy and the FBI Law Enforcement Executive Development Association in internal investigations and policy writing. As Crime Stoppers Coordinator, I have rebuilt that program from 2 board members to 12, and we currently have instituted the Campus Safety Initiative available to all schools at no cost to them. I will bring this innovative thinking to the Constable's office, having all deputies trained in crash investigations, as well as working with the Sheriff's Office and other constables to ensure that our schools and our streets and our highways are safer to travel during the day. And I ask for your support for Hunt County Constable Precinct 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Haynes. Investigator Linson Bell, you may now begin with your opening statement.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Linson Bell. I'm a Greenville Independent School District, class of 1981. I'm a United States Army veteran. I'm a graduate of PJC, Parrish Junior College and Texas A&M University of Commerce. My major was kinesiology. I had no idea I was going to be in law enforcement, but I have been in law enforcement. This is my 28th year. I have served as chief jailer. I have served as deputy sheriff, and I am currently an investigator with the district attorney's office here in Hunt County. I'm a member of Greenville Rotary. I'm a member of the Hunt County Veterans Honor Guard. I serve as youth and choir director at my church at Rising Star Christian Church. In my spare time, I am also a mentor to the ISM students here at Greenville Independent School District, and I also serve as a mentor to Texas A&M University criminal justice majors. I am the mother of 4 boys: Byron Bell, Seth Bell, Elijah Bell, and Isaiah. In closing, saying all that to say, I, Sandra Bell, appreciate everybody that came out to support me this evening, and hopefully I gain your support for this election. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Investigator Linson Bell. Officer Sterner, you may now begin with your opening statement.
My name is Joe Sterner, and some people may know me as Joey, which is not a bad thing. My wife and I, Manya, reside in Lone Oak and have 5 kids between us, ranging from 16 to 27 years of age, and 2 granddaughters, which are our life. My mom and stepdad, the late Nita and Jerry Broadway, senior of Lone Oak, and my in-laws Dale and Deborah Farker, they reside in Commerce, good supporters. To give you a quick history of myself, I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I'm very proud of that. I'm a Desert Storm veteran in Operation Just Cause in Panama. I was part of a company called FAST Company, which is abbreviated for Fleet Anti-Terrorism Strike Team. Not long after discharging from the Marines, I became a Texas State Correctional Officer for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice in 1993, where I did everything from working ADSEG, general population, to a field boss, working the convicts out in the field on horseback. And I was also part of the CERT team, which is a Correctional Emergency Response Team. In 2000, I chose to leave public duties and help my parents with their family-owned carpet cleaning business. In 2009, I went back to public service, and in 2015, became the Chief of Police for the City of Lone Oak, and still hold that position today. I have 80 hours of continuous education and leadership training from the Bill Blackburn Law Enforcement Management Institute at Sam Houston
Thank you, Officer
University.
Sterner. Deputy Valenzuela, you may now begin with your opening statement.
My name's Richie Valenzuela. I've been a Hunt County resident for 40 plus years. I moved here in 1978 when my father retired from the Air Force and got a job at E-Systems. I'm also a graduating class in 1985 from Greenville. Shortly after graduating, I joined the United States Air Force and also participated in Operation Desert Storm. While I was enlisted, I married my wife Tammy of 30 plus years. We have 2 grown children, Christopher and Amanda, and 3 grandchildren. After returning back to Greenville, went to work in the medical field for McCoy Home Health. I did 17 and a half years as a respiratory therapist. In 2012, my wife actually encouraged me to go to the police academy. That's something that I've always wanted to do. 2013, I was hired on by the Hunt County Sheriff's Office in the Patrol Division, where I currently still work. I'm a certified and active SWAT team member. I'm a field training officer, and I hold a intermediate peace officer's license. I've seen all sorts of crimes, whether they're civil crimes, criminal crimes. I've done it all in the short 7 years that I've been a peace officer. And I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Valenzuela. The following question can be answered with a simple yes or no. If you answer yes, we'll have 90 seconds to offer more of a response. Officer Haynes, have you ever been arrested or indicted?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Investigator Linson Bell, have you ever been arrested or indicted?
No.
Thank you. Officer Sterner, have you ever been arrested or indicted?
No.
Thank you. Deputy Valenzuela, have you ever been arrested or indicted?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. Investigator Linson Bell, what qualifications and character qualities equip you to function most effectively in the role of constable?
Ellie, in my training, I have 40 hours biannually in training for law enforcement, TCO hours. You have to have at least 40 hours. I have actually taken the civil process, which included in 40 hours, 20 hours must be in civil process. But as a deputy sheriff, when I was a deputy sheriff, civil was our thing. The constable did not do the civil process. That was one of the main things that I did. As soon as I got to work, I would pick up papers, go serve them. So I'm very familiar with serving papers. I'm familiar with the tax, how the tax constables go out and help with the tax warrants and all. I have no fear. God has not given me the spirit of fear. So I'm ready and willing and waiting for this job. I'm getting ready to walk into my destiny deep in.
Thank you, Investigator Linson Bell. Officer Sterner, what qualifications and character qualities equip you to function most effectively in the role of constable?
I've currently been the chief of police for 4.5 years in Lono, and I think I've been able to change that program around, that department around, and have a lot of faith from my citizens. They call me all hours of the night, and I drop what I'm doing. My wife can be the witness that I get out 2 o'clock in the morning, and they go take care of what I need to take care of. Even though we're a small town, we're a growing town, I also have people call me from outside of the city wanting me to help them with their problems. And I just, a drop of the hat, I do it. I'm the type of person that I get out and I work. I'm a working man and have been all my life.
Thank you, Officer Sterner. Deputy Valenzuela, what qualifications and character qualities equip you to function most effectively in the role of constable?
Just being in Patrol Division, like I mentioned earlier, I've seen a lot of and handled a lot of different cases as far as criminal or civil. I too, I'm very proactive in my job. I believe I get out there and I do building checks, security checks, whatever it takes to get the community safe. I also have had training that required training in order to handle any conditions or any situations that may arise from the position of constable.
Thank you, Deputy Valenzuela. Officer Haynes, what qualifications and character qualities equip you to function most effectively in the role of constable?
One of the things I've learned in law enforcement over the last 28 years is that if you want to find something, as they stated in the previous race, you have to get to know your people. I've also learned as a criminal investigator that there are some databases and programs that you can utilize to find people, to communicate better with them, find them if they've absconded, and also work with your community to solve problems. I've also developed a network through my position as the public information officer and media contacts to get information out about programs that are important to the community, as far as, for example, the Hunt County Crime Stoppers, the campus safety initiative that we're implementing into the school districts. I have a passion for this. I have a passion for that campus safety program, and I think we need to do everything we can to make our community safer, our schools safer, and our churches safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Haynes. Chief Sterner, constables serve papers on a court-mandated, time-sensitive schedule. What challenges, personal or private, might you face in meeting those deadlines, and how would you address those challenges?
With me personally, I don't see much of a challenge because I work. I get out and I expect my people to do the same thing. I know that the Constable's Department right now, they have great people working for them, and I want to continue that work with them. I just don't believe there's a challenge when you get out there and you actually get to know all of your citizens and get to know each other and get the job done. I'm not technically a political person, all these big words. I just can tell you that I'm the type of person that gets out there and gets to know each one of the citizens that I can. I don't think I've met somebody that I don't consider my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Officer Haynes, constables serve papers on a court-mandated, time-sensitive schedule. What challenges, personal or private, might you face in meeting those deadlines, and how would you address those challenges?
First of all, there are no challenges. Last time I checked, I don't have a curfew at home, so I think I'll be okay on that. As far as professional challenges, as stated earlier, is locating the people that have moved, can't find, and I got ahead of myself on the questions. The programs, databases, and resources that I have learned and been trained in over the last 10 to 15 years in my position as an investigator and internal affairs investigator, can utilize those programs, as well as, yeah, I noticed, I'm trying to make this quick, as well as, I'm the internal affairs guy, I said that right? Okay. As well as talking to other members of the community and getting to know where things are at. And I believe I've developed the network and the training and the experience to be able to expedite that process.
Thank you, Officer Haynes. Deputy Valenzuela, constables serve papers on a court-mandated, time-sensitive schedule. What challenges, personal or private, might you face in meeting those deadlines, and how would you address those challenges?
Just as the other candidates had mentioned here and earlier, knowing your people is a very good asset. Been on the streets for 7 years. I've learned to work with individuals, how to talk to them, how to get information from them. I think that's very important. When somebody's willing to give you some more information, that's going to make your job a lot easier. I know currently the constable's office serves hundreds of papers a month. They have a great staff, and we're going to keep that staff together and just use our background, use our relationship with other agencies to help us locate these individuals.
Thank you, Deputy Valenzuela. Investigator Linson-Bell, constables serve papers on a court-mandated, time-sensitive schedule. What challenges, personal or private, might you face in meeting those deadlines, and how would you address these challenges?
Thank you, Ellen. Now, Ellie, I'm going to have to disagree with all these fellas up here. And I say that because I am 57 years old, and in 57 years, I have had challenges on just about every job I have worked on. But when I go to schools, as I mentioned earlier, I take a stack of cards with me with my name on them, with my job description on it, and I exchange those cards with other criminal investigators. I network by conversating and talking. Like I told Mr. Hales earlier, I talk loud and I talk a lot. You have to communicate with other officers, other constables, other sheriffs, just other departments in general. You know, because sometimes we need each other to find people. We have to go out into the community to find people. So it will be a challenge, but I'm up for it. Believe that. Thank you.
Thank you, Investigator Linson Bell. Before we move on to closing statements, could the candidates for county attorney please make their way to the reserved seating area on the left side of the stage? Moving on to closing statements. You all have 2 minutes. Deputy Valenzuela, you may now make your closing statement.
First of all, I'd like to thank the GOP for having us here tonight and everybody attending. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm a very proactive deputy. You know, I don't make a lot of campaign promises, but I will promise you this, that I will give you 100% of my effort, my knowledge, and my experience in this position. When I'm not in the office, I'll be out in the trenches like I am already every day. Security checks, building checks, area checks, whatever it takes to maintain the safety of this community. My line, been in patrol, I've worked with different agencies, and I think that's an asset to any constable or any sheriff's department. I've worked with the constable's office numerous times, serving papers, attachments, evictions. Worked with GPD, I've worked with the U.S. Marshals, ATF, DEA, serving warrants. So I'm not afraid to ask people for help, and I definitely will help anybody that needs the help. Just keep that in mind. What it is for the sake of this community and make this place a better county, not only for me, but for you and for future generations. I appreciate your vote March 3rd. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Valenzuela. Officer Haynes, you may now make your closing statement.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone tonight for coming out in this lovely weather that we're having. And I'd like to commend each one of the my co-candidates up here tonight for their service to our country. In closing, I'd like to say that some of the things that I would like to do with the constable's office is not only take care of the processes that have been put in place by Constable Jones, including the astronomical amount of papers that that precinct serves, but also the other duties that they have taken on and programs they've started, one of which is the program with the SPCA. I would like to visit that program extensively and see if we can expand upon that program. These cases with animal abuse, such as the Canine Journey case last year, we've got to start doing something with that. It's getting out of control, and if you're an animal lover, you understand what I'm saying. Another thing is protecting our first responders out there on our highways. Everyone who has driven up and down Highway 69 and State Highway 34 knows how dangerous that roadway is and how deadly it can be. If the deputy constables are out there already patrolling, there's no reason why they can't go ahead and make a traffic stop and make their presence known on the roadways and try and get people to slow down a little bit. They're already certified officers, and also have them trained in basic crash investigations so we don't leave our volunteer firefighters out on the road for 2 or 3 hours while we wait on a trooper to show up. Nothing against DPS, they do an astronomical job for us. I would also like to continue on my work with the campus safety program and working with the school districts, the sheriff's office, and the other constables to develop programs and put in place that we can make our schools and our rural districts safer for the children that are involved. I always strive to find ways to make a position or a way to get the citizens and the communities involved, and I've demonstrated that in my career in the programs that I've started with the Sheriff's Office. I will continue to do that. You have my word. I ask for your vote coming March 3rd, and thank you for your time and coming out tonight.
Thank you, Officer Haynes. Investigator Linson Bell, you may now make your closing statement.
Thank you. First off, I want to thank Allie and Mr. Hales for this forum, and I want to thank all of y'all for coming out to support each candidate of your choice. I declare Ephesians 3:20 over my life. God will do exceedingly abundantly above all that I ask or think, because I honor him as I walk into my destiny. Thank you. Vote Sandra Linton-Bell, Hunt County Constable, Precinct 1. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, Investigator Linton-Bell. Chief Sterner, you may now make your closing statement.
First off, I would like to thank my lovely wife for being so supportive with all the long hours of work that I do and with this campaign. Second, I would like to thank all my family and friends that have supported me along the way. As police chief, I have worked hard at getting rid of the stigma and the stereotype that came with the city of Lone Oak. We've gotten drugs, drug dealers, and thieves off the street unlike before because we patrol our streets and we are making a safer town to live in. We now have a better relationship with our citizens and the county sheriff's office, better than it has ever been. I've worked with the city council when we've had little to no budget for the police department and wondering if we're going to be able to, the city was able to pay myself or the one other officer we had at the time. To now having 4 vehicles, to which are 2 are brand new uniforms, new equipment, 4 officers, and SRO officer at our schools. And let's not forget my canine Bassa. Got her donated back in June. I'm a code enforcement certified. I've been a director on our city's EDC board, and I have been on our city's ordinance committee for almost 5 years. We have seen a growth of almost 400 in our population over the last 5 years because people want to live in a safe neighborhood. I have my officers and citizens not wanting me to leave, but I think it's time to bring this experience to the constable's office and to the citizens of Precinct 1. I'm not one to sit behind a desk. I like to be out on the streets where I believe the citizens need me. I want to keep the constable's office going in the right direction. I am running for this office because I'm a hardworking man and I've been all my life. I love being a public servant and I believe I can be an asset to the citizens of Precinct 1. Like I said earlier, I'm not political, but I would love your vote and appreciate your vote March 3rd.
Chief Sterner. Ladies and gentlemen, these are your candidates for Constable Precinct 1. Before we get started for the county attorney candidates, we apologize to those viewing via live stream for the audio problems. We have decided we are going to switch to recording the rest of the event. We will upload the video tonight in order to have better video quality. So fear not, you will get to see these terrific candidates. It will just be in a couple of hours. Thank you for your patience. We will now begin with the candidates for county attorney. The 3 candidates for this position are already seated. Mr. Cornad, you may now make an opening statement.
My name is Scott Cornad. I lived in Hunt County for over 46 years. I have a master's in business administration. I got my bachelor's at East Texas State University in Commerce, now Texas A&M Commerce. I'm a certified public accountant. I've got my Juris Doctorate. I currently live in Greenville. I grew up in Quinlan, and I was on the Quinlan ISD school board for 13 years. I have 4 children that still reside in Hunt County, 2 in public schools and elementary school in Greenville. I've practiced law in Hunt County for over 20 years. I prosecuted for 1.5 years, and I prosecuted everything during that time from Class C misdemeanors all the way to murder cases, and I did sit second chair on a capital murder case where the death penalty was sought, but I did that for 1.5 years. I've been a defense attorney. I've tried everything as a defensive attorney from Class C misdemeanors all the way up to murders and capital murders. I've dealt with CPS, fought for children, ad litem for children, fought for parents, and I fought for victims of family violence on a regular basis in my family law cases. I'm the only candidate running for county attorney that has all 3 of that experiences: prosecution, defense, and CPS. I'm the most experienced, most qualified, and most invested in Hunt County of any candidate running. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cornod. Mr. Grogan, you may now make an opening statement.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Calvin Grogan. I am a lifelong Republican running for Hunt County attorney. I'm a lifelong Republican because I went to school, University of Texas at Austin. While I was there, I joined the State Republican Party of Texas back in the 90s. Worked for Governor Bush as an extern. Then I went to Washington, D.C. to work for a Texas senator named Kay Bailey Hutchinson and a congressman from San Antonio. After becoming a lifelong Republican and going to law school then, University of Oklahoma, I came back to practice law in the home state of Texas. At some point, my life changed and I became a prosecutor. People have asked why I chose to become a prosecutor, because I got robbed at gunpoint in Arlington right after passing the bar exam. So I went on my prosecutor career and went to Paris, Texas, and began my career as a prosecutor. Since then, all I've done is prosecute. I've got 13.5 years as a prosecutor. All of those have been either in Lamar County or the last 11 plus years in Hunt County. I've tried more felony jury trials in this county than any other lawyer the last decade. That includes fighting for victims and fighting for justice, and I think that's important when you're deciding who you're going to choose for the most qualified position for the second highest prosecutor position in the county. Now, there's going to be a choice to make, and I've asked for endorsements from the sheriff and the DA, and both of them have graciously given me their endorsements. But I'm here standing in front of you today, mainly because I got the blessing from my beautiful wife, Julie, and my 2 daughters.
Thank you, Mr. Grogan. Mr. Hollis, you may now make an opening statement.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Elisha Hollis. I am an attorney here in Greenville, Texas. And I am, well, most of you are trying to figure out how a 22-year-old guy is sitting up here as an attorney. I'll set your mind at ease, I'm 34. I just look really young. I grew up here in Greenville, and I was homeschooled, and then I went to Texas A&M Commerce, where I got my bachelor's degree in political science. And after getting my bachelor's degree and realizing that I couldn't do math, I realized I needed to go to law school. So I went to a Christian law school in Alabama, and I graduated from there and made my way back to Texas as fast as I could with my wife, Hannah. My wife and I have been married for 8 years, and we have 2 children, Asher, who is 4, and Aurora, who is 2. I came back and because this was home, and I wanted to work here, and I wanted to live here and raise my family here, so I started a practice. And in that practice, I've prosecuted cases for the cities of Greenville, Quinlan, and East Waukene. I've represented clients in criminal cases. I've represented juveniles in criminal cases. And I've represented children and adults in CPS cases pretty extensively. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hollis. Since each candidate has had one small round of applause, we are now going to ask that it be held until the end. Moving on to the next question. It requires a simple yes or no answer. If the answer is yes, you will have 90 seconds to elaborate. Mr. Cornod, have you ever been arrested or indicted?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Grogan, have you ever been arrested or indicted?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Hollis, have you ever been arrested or indicted?
No.
Thank you. The candidates will now be asked additional questions. As before, candidates will have 90 seconds to respond. The format is enhanced from this point on to allow the opposing candidates an opportunity for a 30-second response, if requested, once everyone has given their first response. Each candidate can have up to one response per question. If you would like to request a response, you can either raise your placard or flip it sideways. Mr. Grogan, the county attorney is a key player in Child Protective Services cases. Do you have any concerns about how these cases are handled, and do you have any thoughts on what changes could be made to address your concerns?
Thank you for the question. So I have concerns about how CPS cases will be handled. CPS cases can invade a person's life, break up a family, so they're very important consequences. Typically, the county attorney gets involved with those cases because an investigation is done by a trained CPS investigator. You're going to want somebody as your elected county attorney and his staff to be reviewing those with good judgment. And I think with good judgment, you're going to need a temperament, experience, and a mindset. When I say that, the county attorney's office is a prosecutor's office. We prosecute everything. We prosecute family violence protective orders. We prosecute CPS cases. We prosecute misdemeanors. We prosecute juveniles. It's all about prosecution. As far as specifically with CPS cases, you've got to make a tough decision. Are you going to prosecute a case that's brought to you by CPS seeking to terminate a parent's rights because something's going on in the house, or to remove a child from the house? Those are very serious consequences. And you're going to want somebody that's got level-headed, that won't be quick to respond, that'll be cool, calm, and reflective, will trust and verify all the facts that are presented, whether it's in an affidavit or an investigation, before some drastic decision is made. So that is my answer as far as what I think CPS should be doing and what I would do if I'm elected county attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Grogan. Mr. Hollis, the county attorney is a key player in Child Protective Services cases. Do you have any concerns about how these cases are handled, and do you have any thoughts on changes that could be made to improve the system?
Thank you. So in my practice over the past 7 years, I've handled a lot of CPS cases, and I would say for the most part, Joel Littlefield's office has actually done a very good job of handling those CPS cases. In my opinion, generally I would say that 90% are correct, 5% are correct for the wrong reasons, and 5% are probably wrong. And so there are a percentage of cases that I've seen throughout my history here that I think I would have done differently. But generally, how they're handled, I say that they're handled correctly. Changes, I think that we need to seek. One of the hard things that CPS deals with is their capacity to handle the caseload. And so I think that we need to have someone in the office who is trying to and is lobbying for the best possible way to get as much help from the state as possible. And that's the problem, is we've got CPS up here in Austin who's making decisions for Hunt County. And so that makes these big issues where they're saying, well, you get this, but we actually need more. We need more caseworkers. And so the changes that I would make is I plan to lobby for that. I plan to lobby for more help for CPS because we need it for our children.
Thank you, Mr. Hollis. Mr. Cornod, the county attorney is a key player in Child Protective Services cases. Do you have any concerns about how these cases are handled? And do you have any thoughts on changes that could be made to address your concerns?
Absolutely, and I think that position requires somebody that's got the guts to speak up and say CPS has problems, just like our state legislatures are saying. Right now, there's problems, and they need to be addressed. Does that mean I don't like CPS? No, but I've got the guts to say there needs to be things addressed immediately. I would invite everybody to come to court and listen to CPS court. It's the biggest joke. They sit up there for 30 minutes, and I swear this is the truth. They sit up there for 30 minutes talking about the brand of disposable diaper a foster child should be wearing. That is ridiculous. That should be handled outside the courtroom, not paying several attorneys $100 an hour at taxpayers' expense to talk about such ridiculous stuff. And I've got the guts to say it. I want to work with CPS and say, we've got a problem here. How do we need to address this? How can we deal with this outside the courtroom instead of wasting taxpayers' money to do it? I've got a lot of friends in CASA that are court-ordered, court-appointed special advocates, best interests of the children. A lot of them are supporting me on my campaign because they know I love kids. Because you speak out and say you want to improve doesn't mean you have something against CPS. It says there's definite things that need to be addressed immediately, and I care enough to do it for the kids' sake and for the taxpayers' sake.
Thank you, Mr. Cornad. Mr. Hollis, you will now have a 30-second response.
Thank you. I would like to respond to that. And I think, yes, everyone should take the time to come to a CPS court and see that, because you get to see judges who care about the kids of Hunt County. And I would agree with Mr. Cornad that there are times when you will see arguments in a CPS case that aren't always, that didn't need argued. I think that happens, but I think that I just want to say, go see it, because it'll change your mind on why we need CPS.
Thank you, Mr. Hollis. Mr. Cornad, you have 30 seconds.
I just want to make sure, in saying, I set a set of things that I need to do every year, every day, that I need to improve on. That doesn't mean I don't like myself. I think it needs to be improved on. And to say that, I'm not saying anyone's saying that, but I don't think the judges are doing a fantastic job doing what they're doing. I think the county attorney needs to address things for the judge's sake, for the taxpayers' sake, and for the citizens of Hunt County. That's what I'm saying. Not that people don't care.
Thank you, Mr. Cornad. Mr. Hollis, the county attorney is involved in the filing of requests for protective orders. What principles would you follow in response to such requests?
So, my experience with protective orders is that it starts first, very importantly, with the county attorney who is meeting with that person, because you have to determine, is that person credible or not? There are, in this county, people who file protective orders for their benefit. And there may be some of you who have had that happen or seen it happen. There are also a lot of people who need protection because of domestic violence in the home, because of abusive spouses, or they need protection for their children. So when it comes to filing protective orders, I think it starts with our first line of defense is the county attorney's office. And I think that starts with making sure that you are sitting down with each of those people. Don't just let them file a report and you say, oh, you claim there's domestic violence, and throw it into the court system. That's a good way to let the system be abused and to waste a lot of money. So what we need to do is we need county attorneys who are trained to listen to these victims, to pay attention to the details, and to make sure that the ones who need protection are getting protection, and the ones who are doing it for some other benefit are not wasting our court system's time.
Thank you, Mr. Hollis. Mr. Cornad, the county attorney is involved in the filing of requests for protective orders. What principles would you follow in response to such requests?
First of all, I would say, so everybody understands how I feel about this, I've taught my daughters, don't ever let any man abuse you. If they do, you come tell me and I will take care of it. And if you can, you take care of it. But don't let anybody abuse you. And they've taken my advice on that. I've got a little 5-year-old and I'm going to teach her the same thing. So I do not believe in abuse. I think it's ridiculous. However, there are cases, especially in custody disputes, where people use the courts and make up family violence and try to get a leg up in a custody battle. It happens a lot. I've talked to judges in the past. My mentors as judges, one of them said it took a year-long case to prove that his client didn't do what he did, but it was made up. That is sad. Granted, you got to have somebody that's done both sides. Somebody that's done family law, in my opinion, and have dealt with numerous protective orders. In family law aspect, which I've done for 20 years, you talk to your clients, you discuss with the clients what the issues are, and then you determine whether a protective order is something that they should be doing, or a restraining order would protect them because it's something that they shouldn't be pursuing in the first place, as far as something as strict and as restrictive as a protective order. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cornod. Mr. Grogan, the county attorney is involved in the filing of requests for protective orders. What principles would you follow in response to such requests?
Right, that's a great question. So I'm the only one on this stage that's represented the state to get what's called a sexual assault protective order lifetime. I've done it twice. What typically happens in these cases is you have a person that comes by. First, to answer your question about the criteria, well, that's easy. It's in the family code, what you have to do. You have to show that you've been a victim of domestic violence and it's likely to happen again. It's got to be sworn to. And we have a process in this county how typically women, typically are the ones that get abused, have to go and get an application from women in need. Then it's brought over to the county attorney's office and it's reviewed. And hopefully it's reviewed by a competent attorney that's looking through it with the right prism. When I say the right prism, I'm talking about the mindset, because you can look in this criminal justice system one of two ways. You can look at it as the prism of being the accuser or representing the accused, in my mind, in my opinion. Because if you've always been on the side of the state prosecuting people, you tend to believe your accusers, but you go to verify. So that's one less filter you have to go through when you're protecting these people that are asking for protective orders. Why is that important? Because you have real life consequences. For example, everybody probably heard about the A&M shooting that happened last week. And that woman that's now deceased had a protective order issued out of Dallas County. Okay? But here's another example. We have a capital murder case that's been pending for several years out of Commerce as well. That woman did not get a protective order that she tried to get. Granted, a protective order is just a piece of paper, but it's an extra piece of protection. It gives peace of mind. It gives law enforcement an extra tool, and it needs to be given serious consideration when it's reviewed.
Thank you, Mr. Grogan. Seeing no response requests, we will move to the next question. Mr. Hollis, illegal drugs have damaged many lives in Hunt County. What will you do as a prosecutor to combat illegal drugs?
I think that drugs, the issue with drugs starts in our homes. It starts with our children and with educating our children. So my job, if I was elected as county attorney, is to facilitate education in our schools. And until I get there, I can't tell you exactly how I plan to do that. I've had thoughts. I really feel like we need better. I feel like we need better teaching on what these drugs do to you and how they affect you. And I don't. Not just, you need to see the impact not just on you, but on your community. Often, it's easy to be like, well, I don't use methamphetamine because it kills my body. But they're not thinking about how it affected their mom, how it affected their dad, how it affected their brother and their sister, and how it affected their children. Because that's what we see, is we see drugs destroying the people, and then it just destroys the family. They can't carry on they can't carry on a normal family because drugs have gotten in the way. So I think we need to start teaching that from the beginning. I think we are teaching that, and I think my job, if I was county attorney, is to facilitate that to the best of my ability for the good of this county.
Thank you, Mr. Hollis. Mr. Grogan, illegal drugs have damaged many lives in Hunt County. What will you do as a prosecutor to combat illegal drugs?
And to be clear with your question, this is for a county attorney position, so the legislature has classified the drugs into different penalty groups based upon their value, medicinal value, their effect on people. In the misdemeanor office, you're going to be typically dealing with marijuana mainly, some other things like K2, hydrocodone. There are different penalty groups based upon the weight. But I will tell you what I've done for the last 11 years for this community is I've sent drug dealers to prison multiple times for life sentences, multiple times. That helps fight drugs. It is a never-ending battle. I think it was President Reagan's wife back in the 80s said that she declared a war on drugs. That war is never ending. We've got patrol officers out there, they fight it, the prosecutors fight it every day in court. We're talking about dealers, though. You're talking about users, which is the only type you're going to see as a county attorney. In the misdemeanor office, there's all kinds of options available. I believe the current county attorney has a policy in place not to penalize these people, to offer what's called pretrial diversion, where they come into the system, but they're basically, if they do what they're supposed to do within a 12-month or 6-month program, it gets wiped off their record. And that's good. That's what we want, because we don't want to have a high recidivism rate where people keep coming through the door and they get no treatment. So that's an option for the county attorney's office. If I'm elected, obviously I will no longer prosecute drug dealers because I'll be dealing with the low-level stuff like the marijuana, the K2, and the hydrocodone. But I believe pretrial diversion is a new tool, and I think it's a good tool, and I'm all for it.
Thank you, Mr. Grogan. Mr. Cornod, illegal drugs have damaged many lives in Hunt County. What will you do to combat illegal drugs?
If anybody knows me, they know how I feel about methamphetamine. I'm one of the most outspoken people about the dangers of methamphetamine and how it affects families, how it affects kids, how it affects the taxpayer dollar, because most of the cases in CPS and most of the cases in felony court and a lot of the cases in misdemeanor court are somehow directly related to methamphetamine. And I will do what I've done for 13 years in the Quinlan Independent School District. Now, I haven't been on the board for a while because I've lived in Greenville for several years, but we started a drug education program. I demanded a drug education program be started where our kids are taught the negative effects and what methamphetamine does. It's very addictive. If you're subjected to peer pressure and you use methamphetamine, you use it again, you use it again, use it again. By the time you know it, you'll be doing anything, selling your soul to get more methamphetamine. I think it's a terrible, terrible drug. K2 is a terrible drug too. And I can't imagine a situation as county attorney where I would have an offense, for example, marijuana, where methamphetamine was also involved, that I would offer a pretrial diversion. They need treatment, they need to go to classes, they need to be punished if they deserve punishment, but that's where it depends on the actual offense. But you have to look at it and determine what the appropriate punishment is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cornod. Mr. Grogan, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I just want to clarify something at the end of my last statement. When I said I'm all for pretrial diversion, that's based upon the circumstances. So obviously, one of the things that I've done for 13 and a half years as a prosecutor, you look at the file, you see the seriousness of the offense, you look at the facts. But you also look at what's called a criminal history of a person. And if a person is always offending, got felonies on their record, they're committing violent crimes, they're committing property crimes, well, that's a person that's not going to be a candidate for pretrial diversion. And there are criteria that the current county attorney has in place. I'm most likely going to follow his criteria. But in general, I think it's a good idea to not ruin people's lives for the rest of
Thank you, Mr. Grogan. Mr. Hollis, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond briefly to when we're talking about marijuana, and Mr. Grogan brought up marijuana, and it made me think of the fact that maybe marijuana is not as serious as methamphetamine, but there's still other destructive issues. First, kids cannot be using marijuana, and we need our children to understand the destructiveness that can have on their body. But secondly, the other effects, like being in a car with your friends who have marijuana, and guess what? You get stuck with a possession charge.
Mr. Cornod, you have 30 seconds.
When I see somebody that went to high school with my daughters coming out and they're hanging around these drug dealers and they're using methamphetamine and doing disgusting things, I think, where did we go wrong as a society? Good kids doing very bad things and doing very bad things as a result of their addiction to methamphetamine. I sit down and I talk to them. I think the county attorney's office can be used as a bully pulpit to help educate kids, especially on the negative effects of methamphetamine use.
Thank you, Mr. Cornod. Mr. Cornod, what is one other area of responsibility of the county attorney that you consider critical, and how would you carry out these duties?
Well, the county attorney's office deals with misdemeanors, juvenile misdemeanors and felonies, and CPS. It's also a business. That's another critical aspect. You don't just go in there and say it's prosecution. It's not. It's running a business. You've got employees. You've got to budget. You've got to deal with management issues. That's one of the most critical things involved with the county attorney's office. The current county attorney is excellent. He's done an excellent job. I mean, no criticism by this, but he hasn't tried a case, I don't think, since he's been in there. He monitors, teaches, and supervises the ones that do it. So you need someone in that position that has not only the criminal defense experience so they can tell them what to look out for, but the prosecutor experience to teach them how to do their job. Another critical aspect is dealing with law enforcement. I don't know how many times I've had law enforcement come in. I've got a lot of friends with law enforcement. Even though I'm a defense attorney, I have a lot of friends. But they come up to me and say, will you be open and have an open door policy essentially to discuss how I think you can help me do my job? And I won't go into details, but there's specific things that certain officers complain about as far as reports, etc., things getting kicked back to them. We've got investigators too, we can do investigation, things like that. I think I can help them do better in the courtroom, and I think they can help me do better helping them in their job.
Thank you, Mr. Cornad. Mr. Grogan, what is another area of responsibility of the county attorney that you consider critical, and how would you carry out this duty?
Thank you. So, like I said earlier, I went to become a prosecutor based upon my life change, and I want to continue being a prosecutor. I didn't go to law school and continue on this career to be a finance person, a budget person. I'm not running for county auditor. I'm running for county attorney, which is the second highest position in the county. If I want somebody to handle the numbers, I will hire somebody. They have a person right now that's the office manager. I will have competent staff to deal with that. I haven't even decided if I'm elected. If a lot of people, when they get elected to a prosecutor position, never see the inside of a courtroom again. That's not me. I've tried over 150 total jury trials, and I don't think I would quit trying cases even if I get elected to be county attorney. I'm going to rely on my staff to handle stuff like the numbers and the budget. If I have to sign my name and review that stuff, I will before I sign my name. But my main goal is going to be prosecution. The area of the law that I think is the most important, though, with that office is the relationships that we have with law enforcement agencies in the county. There are a lot of agencies in this county that bring cases. I'm familiar with the district attorney cases, which are going to be a lot more in-depth because they're felony cases than the misdemeanor cases. But it's very important that whoever takes this position has a good relationship with those agencies. I've built those relationships. I know those people. I know how to review a case. There's not going to be any downtime if I was to take office for me to be able to pick up a file, call whoever I need to at each of these agencies to say what the problem is, what's not the problem, and we're going to go to trial, those kind of things.
Thank you, Mr. Grogan. Mr. Hollis, what is another area of responsibility of the county attorney that you consider critical, and how would you carry out this duty?
So when you say another area, I'm assuming something we haven't talked about, because I think CPS is probably one of the most critical, as well as and of course, the criminal side of that, and protective orders. But another area that I don't think we've talked about very much here is juvenile law. In Hunt County, the county attorney's office handles every single juvenile case that comes through there, from a kid that gets picked up for getting in a fight, for an assault case, or a kid that gets picked up for a felony, including maybe possession of methamphetamines, or maybe even up to murder cases that are handled through the county attorney's office. That is critical because, as every one of you know that has children, and I think each of the guys standing at the table that I have that has children know that our children are our future. And we need to make sure that we are protecting our citizens from children who are committing offenses, but that we're also protecting our children from having records that go past what is necessary to protect our community. And so I think that that's something that's heavy on my heart, is to make sure that we're prosecuting the cases we need to prosecute, that we're not prosecuting the cases we don't need to prosecute, and we're not doing things that are going to affect these children's ability to go to college and other things if we can help that.
Thank you, Mr. Hollis. Before we enter closing statements, I would ask that the two candidates for sheriff make their way over to the reserved waiting area. Okay, Mr. Grogan, you may now make your closing statement.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight on such a dismal night with the rain and everything. So I am running for your county attorney as a Republican. I grew up, my father's in the crowd tonight, the son of, and I'm the oldest of his children, 5, of an Air Force pilot. Served over in Vietnam, served in Desert Storm. I have followed in his tradition, his father's tradition, and I'm currently serving in the military in the United States Air Force. Okay? I believe that's important because the qualities you learn as an officer in the military, me specifically the United States Air Force, I use in my job every day, just as the qualities that I use as a prosecutor when reviewing cases. Because a minute ago, I referred to you as 3 important things I think are going to be my guiding principles that make me clearly the most qualified for the elected county attorney, which is the second highest prosecutor in the county. That is your temperament, your mindset, and your experience. Temperament. You have to be able to be cool, calm, and reflective. You can't respond to everything that's out there. You have to get all the facts before you put anything out there. It's a public office. People are looking at you and depending upon your decisions, and your decisions affect people's lives. My experience is the ability to be able to evaluate a case and decide whether to go forward with the case or not. Mindset is what I talked about earlier. When you're looking at a case, it's depending upon which side you're looking at it, right? In the criminal justice system, it's an adversarial system. I have fought for the last 13 years on the side of justice fighting for victims. Okay? I've represented the state the last 13 years. On the other side are defense attorneys who do a very good job, and they fight for their clients. But you need somebody that represents the state fighting for the state every day in court. Otherwise, you don't have an even playing field. And when you're deciding who to vote for, look at who's the most qualified. And who's the most qualified, in my opinion, is going to be the one that's been your career prosecutor for the last 13 and a half years, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grogan. Mr. Hollis, you may now make your closing statement.
Thank you. Since I began practicing in Hunt County, I have practiced with one goal, and that was to glorify God in what I do. If you look at the back of my business card, I have always held myself out as a Christian attorney, and I have a verse on there. And I did that because I wanted to be different if possible. And I'm not saying this about my fellow candidates aren't Christians or anything like that. What I'm saying is that my goal is to honor God and to find justice through godly principles and biblical principles. I plan to do that. I may look young, but wisdom comes from God, and I can tell you that God says if you don't have it, ask for it. So that's what I plan to do if I were to need to do that. I believe that I can be a good county attorney. I believe I can be the county attorney that this county needs because I have extensive experience representing children and adults in CPS cases. I know these caseworkers, I know these investigators, I know these supervisors, I know some of the regional supervisors. I believe I can advocate for our children in that. I also believe in justice, and that goes both ways. We need justice for all people, and so yes, we're in an adversarial system where we have a prosecution and a defense, and I'm always trying to sit and see both sides. I want to understand the defendant, I want to understand the state, and I want to do what's right and just, not what's, my job isn't to compete, it's to find justice.
Thank you, Mr. Hollis. Mr. Cornad, you may now make your closing statement.
Before I decided to run for county attorney, I've been a lifelong participant my entire adult life in Hunt County. I've volunteered for things like Shattered Dreams before I decided to run. I'm a member of the Rotary, that's recent. I've been involved in our children, in our schools, and talking to our children for 13 years, way before I decided to run. I've invested in Hunt County. If I lose, I will continue to reside here. If I win, I will continue to reside here. I'm going to die in Hunt County. I'm not going to go anywhere else. I think the one thing that this position requires the most is integrity. And the things I want to do for Hunt County, we talked about. I want to work with law enforcement. I want to work with the district attorney's office because they're not two separate departments. They should be working together because a lot of the cases have multiple cases, misdemeanors and felonies. Well, they work them separate, and I'm not criticizing anybody, but they ought to be working together to save taxpayer money instead of working them over here, working them over there, as if you're completely separate and you don't even talk to the other department, the county attorney or the district attorney. I want to work with CPS, I want to work with CASA, I want them to make me better, I want to make them better. But as far as integrity goes, probably everybody knows here there's a fake Facebook page made about me, and it's a Slam Scott Pornot Facebook page, and I'll give one example, it's a ridiculous example. Documents that came from the district attorney's office, which is disgusting, say that I felt sorry for a case that I was prosecuting, and it was a murder case. Well, the guy it was self-defense. I would have shot the guy too. If I was the lead prosecutor, I wouldn't have prosecuted the guy. I was in his house, somebody was coming at him. Things get taken out of context. Integrity is very, very important in that job.
Thank you, Mr. Pornot. Ladies and gentlemen, these are your candidates for county attorney. We will now begin with the candidates for Hunt County Sheriff. The two candidates for this position are already seated. Constable Jones, you may make an opening statement.
My name is Terry Jones. I'm seeking office of Hunt County Sheriff's Office. I'm a lifelong Republican with strong Christian values. My family's been in Hunt County for over 5 generations. I've served the citizens of Hunt County in law enforcement for the last 27 years. I was elected in 2009 as a constable, served 3 terms in the largest constable's office in Hunt County. We've taken in over $4 million. I've ran this like a business. It's grown. I was employed by the Hunt County Sheriff's Office in 1994, patrolman. In 99, I was promoted to CID, criminal investigations. I have had hands-on training, worked hands-on cases, capital murder, child abuse, burglaries, many other offenses here in Hunt County. While doing that, I carried the highest clearance rate in Hunt County of all of them. I have a master's peace officer's license and all the training to be a Hunt County Sheriff. And I have over 54,000 hours logged in on the streets of Hunt County working.
Thank you, Constable Jones. Sergeant Luke, you may now make an opening statement.
Hi, I'm Kirby Dean Luke, and I'm running to be your next Hunt County Sheriff. I live in Wolf City, where I graduated high school. I also have my bachelor's degree in emergency management from Ashland University. I've also graduated from the Institute of Law Enforcement Administration School of Supervision and Management. I've always been service-minded to serve my fellow citizens. I knew that at an early age. I joined the United States Army at 17 years of age. From there, I served a total of 10 years active duty before I got into my law enforcement career. I'm a decorated combat veteran of Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom. After 24 years, I retired from that. And out of the time I've been in law enforcement, I've done it for almost 26 years. I've done just about every job there is available in law enforcement, from jail all the way up to patrol supervisor. I've supervised everything from criminal investigations to traffic safety to background and hiring and internal affairs. That gives me 22 years as a supervisor in management and law enforcement. I firmly believe that the citizens I serve are crucial to be involved with modern day law enforcement. I believe in the philosophies of community policing, and I intend to do that if elected your next Hunt County Sheriff.
Thank you, Sergeant Luke. The following question requires a simple yes or no answer. If the answer is yes, you will have 90 seconds for a further response. Constable Jones, have you ever been arrested or indicted?
Yes, ma'am, I have been arrested.
Okay.
Never been indicted.
The question is, how would that impact your function in the office of sheriff?
Let me tell you how it impacted my function. In 1986, me and another country boy disagreed on something, and we got into a fight. Police pulled up there. We was both arrested, taken in to sit for about 2 hours before Mickey Money. It's a Class C offense, disorderly conduct, same as a traffic ticket. We sat there and I seen Mr. Mickey Money, and he walked in and he said, $30 fine, $15 credit. And I said, Judge, we don't have no money. And he said, boys, don't let me see you here ever again. He never did. The next time I walked in the Hunt County Sheriff's Office, it was a person that I'd arrested. And I know how that feels. And I wasn't proud of it. And that gives you the compassion to care about people. And I've done it the whole time. I will do what it takes if I have to. But I will treat everybody fair and everybody equal. Because I still, Matthew 7:11. And that's just the way that's what I try to live by on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Constable Jones. Sergeant Luke, have you ever been arrested or indicted?
No, I have not.
Thank you. We do ask for the audience to hold applause until the end. Sergeant Luke, what are your qualifications, including any updated additional training you could use to serve the citizens of Hunt County as sheriff?
So I've been fortunate enough to work both at Hunt County as a sheriff deputy and a supervisor, and also at the City of McKinney Police Department. Over that time, I've been able to be trained in pretty much all the modern methods of law enforcement and policing techniques, and the philosophy of community policing, which I strongly believe in. I got my master's peace officer license in 2010, which was a pretty good achievement based on the training and education, but I constantly look for things that will make me a better law enforcement officer for the citizens I serve, even to the point where I've actually created programs that have been adopted by the state.
Thank you. Constable Jones, what are your qualifications, including any updated additional training you could use to serve the citizens of Hunt County as sheriff?
My qualifications, like I said, I carry a master's police officer license. I have not near as much training as Mr. Luke, but I will say this, I have a lot of training. And the training I have is knowing the public, knowing the people, knowing my locations. I've recovered more stolen property. I've worked homicides, like I said, all the way through. I have 7 homicides that I can tell you, 5 of which I have total confessions, which was convicted. These people are away. This is from training here, boots on the ground. We do get required training. I'm going to run through something real quick. McKinney's 69 square miles. We're 880. McKinney has 200 officers. We have 25 on patrol. It's hard to sit in school. We are boots on the ground. We get our training as we go. And I do have the required training.
Thank you, Constable Jones. Would you like to respond? You have 30 seconds.
So I understand what Mr. Jones is saying. I also worked here in Hunt County. I understand the mileage. But as far as sitting behind a desk and just getting training, that's the hardest thing I've ever done. A lot of times I have to do that on my days off, or I have to do it by taking my own personal vacation time. So it's not just based on sitting at a desk and getting all the training I want.
Thank you. Constable Jones, mass shootings are a national and local concern. What are the principles you would follow to prepare for and respond to such an incident?
We're already in effect is one of the things that you'll read on, it's a transition. We're trained, we have 3 officers at the sheriff's office, but there's 3 officers at the sheriff's office that's actually trained an active shooter. The Greenville PD has officers too. All the county is now training in this. My thing is a transition, because we have armed We have armed teachers in some of the schools and some not in other locations. We need to train all the way around. This way, if we have a shooting, when the officers come to the location, everybody will know how to transition into the mode where we do not have other casualties. Yes, we have already got that in effect, and we are working towards it.
Thank you. Sergeant Luke, mass shootings are a national and local concern. What are the principles you would follow to prepare for and respond to such an incident?
Well, the first thing is I'm very well trained and an instructor in alert training, which is response to active shooter training. It's got to start somewhere. We have 3 schools in Hunt County that rely solely on the sheriff's office. So for our county, that's the first place I need to concentrate, is to make sure we have a boot on the ground in the school. I've talked to 2 of the districts. They're open to the suggestion of having an SRO or SRD on campus. That's still some things to be negotiated. But I want to extend that also to the churches and the businesses that want to participate at some point, to also have training for their employees and parishioners.
Thank you. Next question. Sergeant Luke, do you have any concerns about the staffing level or organization at the Sheriff's Department? And if so, how would you address these concerns?
I absolutely have problems with the staffing at the Sheriff's Office. It's to no fault of their own. There's never going to be enough law enforcement gun toters at any agency. We don't have enough where I currently work at McKinney, and we have 350 plus right now. The way to deal with that is obviously look at what we do have and see how we can use it better. So I will reorganize and restructure as needed to make that work. But also, I'm going to use technology to our advantage. We build these machines to help ourselves out. We need to use those in order to try to help us fight crime better.
Thank you. Constable Jones, do you have any concerns about the staffing level or organization at the Sheriff's Department? And if so, how would you address these concerns?
Yes, ma'am. There's always been that concern. Like I said, I've spent 27 years right here. I work hand in hand, day to day, with these officers along with any other officers in the surrounding cities and the counties. I also work very well with the Commissioner's Court. And to say that you're going to implement a program, you have to know, it's going to have to go through the Commissioner's Court. You have to know that the money is there. And yes, I would prove ourselves, but I say time management, because there is time management issues. I am boots on the ground. I will have a staff that does, a command staff that I can depend on to go through and see what's going on. And then at that time, I will also be out here in a unit, a marked unit, with the deputies to know what is going on out here. Now do this. You cannot judge something until you come in and assess the situation and you do know what they have.
You have 30 seconds to respond.
So I understand how government works and how the Commissioner's Court budgets work quite well, actually. The thing is I've already looked at the current budget, and there are things that we can do without having to go back before the commissioners and ask for more money and more personnel. And I understand the need to be out there occasionally as the sheriff, but you're the CEO. You're the guy that's supposed to make sure everything else is running, including the jail.
Thank you. Constable Jones, illegal drugs have damaged many lives in Hunt County. What will you do as sheriff to combat illegal drugs?
One thing is I have what I call a special assignment team. I'd like to put that into effect to where if you have a drug house, you just have a high area with that. You take 2 officers, you set them out there. It could be any 2 officers. You put them in that area, you make traffic stops, you let them, our presence be known. If you prove it, we run search warrants. Yes, the sheriff's office now has people working with DEA. They're in there. They run Sunday morning, 8 a.m. briefing. We run a search warrant, and I was a part of that search warrant on a meth house. Yes, I do know what we have, but the other plus is when we hit these houses here, and I'm proud of this. When I walk in, let me tell you the first thing they say with them, Mr. Jones, they know me. The people know me. I don't have any backup in me when it comes to this. This is my county. my people. And I'm gonna say this one time. My my mother's from Caddo Mills, my father's from Commerce, and my wife's from Quinlan. Everything else in the center of this is my family. And yes, this is personal.
Thank you, Constable Jones. Sergeant Luke, illegal drugs have damaged many lives in Hunt County. What will you do as sheriff to combat illegal drugs?
So what my colleague said about knocking on doors, running warrants, that's your traditional methods of taking care of drug problems. And there's nothing wrong with it. It has to be done, and we will do that. But I believe in the community policing philosophy. I believe we have to involve the community into some decision-making process within the sheriff's office. That will go a long ways to helping combat our youth, to educate them at their expectations. Basically, the village raising the children.
Thank you, Sergeant Luke. Sergeant Luke, what, if anything, can be implemented to deal with the missing persons cases in Hunt County?
That is a very passionate subject to a lot of folks in this county, I've learned. One of the things that I intend to do is reevaluate and reopen each one of these cases and take a second look with a second set of eyes. I've got resources and relationships that have already reached out to me if elected that have volunteered their time. As far away as the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office, as far as the FBI. We're going to look at those and see what kind of closure we can come up with the families. Some will be solved, some may not be solved. And then for the future cases, we're going to try to make sure that we are as transparent as possible, making sure there's an open line of communication until the case is solved or however it's resolved. That family will always have somebody they can call and get an answer.
Thank you, Sergeant Luke. Constable Jones, what, if anything, can be implemented to deal with the missing persons cases in Hunt County?
Let me tell you about the missing persons case. Okay, this is tragic. We have them. But I can tell you, personally, there was a man went missing from L3. I have personally taken the boots and jeans. It's not just me. I am Captain. I've taken my horse, my friends, volunteered and rode and looked and looked. Same thing with Michael Chambers. I can tell you every stitch of ground across the road. I have been there as volunteers. You know, I've been in each one of them. I will tell you something. I worked a homicide where a man had been missing in Quinlan for 7 weeks. I was able to go to Houston and by myself acquired a confession from a guy. He rode all the way back and showed us where the body was. 7 weeks later, I brought that young man home to his family. It was not the way I wanted him, but I did. But because of that and my passion, Tracy Alford and David Hickman are now serving life sentences for homicide, and that's a missing person. I don't believe in cold cases. I don't like the word cold. If you're missing, or if there's a case out here that's not solved, it's a hot case.
Thank you, Constable Jones. Sergeant Luke, do you have a plan to address the influx of undocumented immigrants in Hunt County?
The only plan that I would be able to come up with at this time would be I would work hand in hand with our federal officials, ICE, to make sure that we're doing whatever it is on our part that we can do to stop that problem.
Thank you, Sergeant Luke. Constable Jones, do you have a plan to address the influx of undocumented immigrants in Hunt County?
I have to agree totally with him. That's a great answer.
Thank you, Constable Jones. We will now enter closing statements. You will have 2 minutes for your closing statement. Constable Jones, you may begin.
I didn't figure this would last long back here. That's about all I can stand for that. Okay. Let me explain something. I say this in my county. All this is taken personal. I have proven my management skills. I've never said anything about, sitting behind a desk. I just don't. I am boots on the ground, very much. Management skills, like I said, over $4 million brought into the county. $4 million. That's just way over our budget. I started out with one unmarked unit. I had a a sergeant, 2 patrolmen, a part-time, a full-time clerk. My office has grown, and I do manage. But my biggest concern is my family in Hunt County, and I'm looking at every one of them. I like this, and I'm going to say it. Google me. Look, my name, Hunt County, all over. Most people know me. I said, you get that reputation for a reason. I'm out here working. You see me pacing back there? I'm not nervous. I'm a little nervous. This is just the way I don't stand still. I do not. Management, yes. You bet. I will manage. I do manage. I understand the jail. I know the budgets and everything. I can tell you what the jail's going through right now. I can tell you what cells are being painted and what pipes, what they're working on the showers and everything else. I can tell you that. But that's not what I'm here. I'm here to tell you I am the guy you have been calling for 27 years. With your cows out, your property stolen, and everything. I carry my own cow list in my phone to let the deputies know who they belong to. I am the guy that has retrieved your stolen property, and yes, I'm the guy that has brought your loved one home, and I am the guy that will continue to look and continue to work, and I am that man. I have no backup when it comes to me in that. Thank you.
Your closing statement.
Again, thank you guys and ladies and gents for being here tonight and giving us some of your time. The main thing that I want to compare is we both have about the same amount of time in service. We've probably done very, very similar types of cases as an officer. But what we're talking about here is the CEO, the guy that runs the place, the guy that manages the place. I'm the guy that can do that. I've supervised as many as 40 plus people on anything from criminal investigations to special events and security. I believe we need a philosophy change. I propose to bring it to you. I'm very passionate about doing the right thing, doing the best you can, and treating others the way you want to be treated. I've lived that my entire career. I lived that before I became a police officer, and it certainly helped me do this. So all I'm doing is asking you to think, educate yourself, and hope you vote for me on March 3rd.
Thank you, Sergeant Luke. Ladies and gentlemen, your candidates for Hunt County Sheriff.
This video has been brought to you by Juice 34. Juice is your community-owned provider for electric, internet, cable TV, and true local programming.